episode 62 of the Habs Culture podcast. My name is Justin Schwartz. I'm alongside Liam Baum. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, we're in a little bit of a different environment. Liam is in his respective area. I'm in my respective area. But we still made it work, and we're still going to try and make it work for you guys all year long. A big 2023-2024 season for the Montreal Canadiens coming up, and we couldn't be more excited to share that with you guys and to, provide content throughout the season. And just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up, we have a little bit of a schedule in place. It's an imminent schedule, but we're looking at doing once, maybe twice a week, some shorter episodes dissecting the games of the week and some players and looking at some specific matchups. So we're really excited to provide you guys with that type of content. But today, for the time being, there's not a lot going on in the NHL, right? We're about a month out, right? September 9th today. So I'm about a month out from the NHL, from the start of the NHL regular season. So we thought that we'd bring you guys with some player rankings from different positions. And today is going to be part 1 of 2. So make sure to tune in for part 2 later in the week. But we're going to be focusing on centers, left wings, and right wings today. We have come up with our top 5 at each position, and we have a few honorable mentions, and we'll discuss our picks and why we chose these players. A few hot takes for sure. I see Liam on the other end ready to fire at me with some hot takes, but we're going to get it started. Liam, how are you feeling about this, about our challenge today?
No, I'm feeling good. So just to be specific, this is rankings for the upcoming season, not, in their total history, their total career. It's what we think the top centers, left wings, and right wings are going to be going into the 2023-2024 season.
Yeah, sorry. I think you cut out a little bit there, but let's we'll keep going, and if it gets worse, we'll try and restart. But anyway, do you want to lead us off with your center rankings?
Yeah, I'll go right away. Starting off, we'll start from number 5 and go to 1, if that works. So Absolutely. At center, number 5 going into the season, I got the Toronto Maple Leafs newly signed to an extension, highest paid player in the league, Auston Matthews. Number 4, I got New Jersey's Jack Hughes. Number 3, part of that dynamic duo in Edmonton, Leon Draisaitl. Number 2, Nathan MacKinnon. And obviously, number 1, the GOAT, Connor McDavid.
Truthfully, I like the rankings. I can't sit here and harp on you too much. I think a lot of people will probably come at you and tell you that Auston Matthews behind Jack Hughes is crazy, but I'm sure you have your reasoning for that. If I dived into my top 5 right away, starting from 5, I'm definitely starting off with Jack Hughes. And I think a lot of people will be quick to comment on how Sidney Crosby is going to be left out of this top 5, and we can discuss that after. But Jack Hughes as my number 5, Auston Matthews as my number 4, Nathan MacKinnon as my number 3, Leon Draisaitl as my number 2, and Connor McDavid as my number 1. Our lists seem to differ a little bit, just a touch. Same players, different order.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so right away, like you said, maybe we'll get some heat for leaving Crosby out here, but he's my number 6 right there, honorable mention. But Jack Hughes just showed so much promise and so much improvement last year that I had to put him on. And Auston Matthews, although he had a down year last year, he still had 40 goals or 41 goals, whatever it was. So if a down year for a player is 41 goals, he's a special player. So couldn't leave Auston Matthews off this. And I think he's coming back for a huge season this year after getting paid. And then obviously the top 3 have been the same for probably the last 2-3 seasons. Don't need much explanation for that. All 3 of them will probably put up 120 plus points if they can stay healthy. And yeah, that's all I got to say about those guys.
Yeah, look, I'm definitely in agreement there, and I think and sorry, I wanted to say something right off the top here. I made a mistake. I put Draisaitl ahead of MacKinnon. That was absolutely a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. So my real ranking from 5 to 1 is Hughes, Matthews, Draisaitl, MacKinnon, McDavid. That was a mistake on my part. Not to say that MacKinnon is that much better than Draisaitl, but I think he definitely has the edge as an individual player right now. And look, for the most part, I'm in agreement with you. I think definitely Auston Matthews, if his down year is 41 goals, you're definitely in for a big comeback season after signing that massive contract. There's no doubt about that. And I think there is a case to be made for why Jack Hughes is in a prime spot to succeed yet again in his third or fourth season in the league now?
Yeah, fourth season.
Fourth season in the league, but let's take his first season, his rookie season, with a grain of salt, right? He just averaged about 0.25 points per game, maybe a little over that. So I'm not really going to read too much into that as an 18-year-old out of the USNDP. But what I will read into is his season last season. And I think that absolutely merits a top five ranking heading into the 2023-24 season. And for those that are concerned with leaving Sidney Crosby off this list, I'm in total agreement that Sidney Crosby doesn't get the respect that he necessarily deserves. And you might be saying, well, then why are you leaving him off this list? And I think it's just because the center position, if we're including Draisaitl, who plays a little bit of both, but we're going to include him in this ranking, has evolved entirely, right? You see the newcomers in Tage Thompson, Roope Hintz has emerged, Mika Zibanejad, has emerged, and Elias Pettersson has emerged. And I'm leaving a bunch of guys off this list, but the truth is that this position has emerged in the NHL. So leaving Sidney Crosby off this list isn't entirely crazy in my opinion. And I think that obviously he merits an honorable mention. There's no doubt about that. But I think that for where this league is heading and for what the five guys that we ranked ahead of him can do and have shown to do, I think Crosby at 6 is very valid for right now.
Yeah, he's a great player. He's obviously a top player in the league still putting up an insane amount of points. I wouldn't be surprised if he can crack 100 again, because that's just how Sidney Crosby is. But just, I feel like he's right under that superstar tier right now, where those other five guys are. And like you said, again, Pettersson, I wouldn't be surprised if he cracks 110 this season. Tage Thompson, same thing. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Tim Stützle, because I think he's going to be pushing 100 points. And possibly next season, we'll be talking about this. Maybe he'll be right there in the top 5.
Yeah, I like that. I think you got to give credit where credit's due. I mean, look, I think Sebastian Aho is probably in that next tier behind some of these guys, and probably in the same tier as Stützle at this point in time. But maybe hasn't cracked that next level yet. He hasn't got that next level. But I'm gonna go back on something that we just discussed, and I think it's Elias Pettersson here. And not that he doesn't get enough credit, because I think he's starting to get that credit. But let's not forget that he had 102 points in 80 games this past season. You mentioned the fact that he's probably going to put up 110 points. And in my eyes, 110 points in an 82-game season, so he only missed 2 games last season, that merits a top 5 finish, in my opinion. So, look, I think if we're gonna put Crosby in this league as an honorable mention at 6, I think Elias Pettersson is tied for 6, if not 7, for in these rankings. And yeah, like we said, we can look at guys like Hintz and Zibanejad and Brayden Point and whatnot, but Pettersson has really emerged on a Canucks team that really, really struggled last season.
100%. And maybe he's not right there in the top 5, top 6, top 7, just because based on how his team does. But if we're talking individually, he's definitely right there.
Absolutely. And look, some of these rankings are tough because you have to separate point production versus player impact. And I think that if you're talking about player impact, a guy like Brayden Point should absolutely be in the conversation. Not necessarily top 5, because we just talked about how stacked the top 5 is, but Brayden Point absolutely deserves some credit for what he's capable of doing at the center position. And look, it's all based off team need and what these guys provide to their respective teams. And can we back up for a second? And we're only going to spend a couple more minutes on this, but Tage Thompson. Is Tage Thompson getting discredited or underrated in this respective conversation, Liam?
I potentially think so, because look at the Sabres before they had Tage Thompson. They had Jeff Skinner, who was doing absolutely nothing. And they brought in Alex Tuch, who was never the type of player he was before last season, where he's putting up 70 plus points. So Tage Thompson has really contributed to the team's success. And I think like we talked about last episode when we were ranking the divisions, Buffalo's looking to have a big season this year. And that's Tage Thompson's going to have a huge part in that. So I think he is underrated here.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think the fact that, look, maybe he's not top 5, or not maybe, he's not top 5 right now, but I think that top 10 is absolutely in the cards for Tage Thompson going into the season, if it's not already, right? So I think we give credit where credit is due, but if you want to just list off your top 5 here, Liam, and I'll list up my top 5 before we get into our left wingers.
Yeah. So I had Matthews number 5, Jack Hughes number 4, Draisaitl number 3, McKinnon number 2, and McDavid number 1.
And I have Jack Hughes number 5, Austin Matthews number 4, Leon Draisaitl number 3, Nathan McKinnon number 2, and Connor McDavid number 1. So again, these are absolutely going to be posted to our socials, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it, it's going to be there. Interact with us. Let us know what you think, because we've seen on TikTok there's a lot of people that disagreed with our division rankings. So come at us for our position rankings as well. Moving on to our left wing rankings. Liam, you want to start us off once again here?
Yeah, I'll go for it here. Number 5, maybe a bit of a surprise here, maybe not. I got Brady Tkachuk. Number 4, I feel like I might get some heat for this one, but I'm huge on him. Clayton Keller for the Arizona Coyotes. Number 3, I got Artemi Panarin. Number 2, Kirill Kaprizov. And number 1, Jason Robertson.
Okay, I like the list. And you guys keep in mind that there's a lot of players. There's some people that might consider Matthew Tkachuk a left wing in this case. There's a lot of people that, for example, Jack Hughes plays a little bit of center, a little bit of left wing, but we're going based off of their true position. So we're going to keep it that way. I'm gonna go here and sorry, did you have Ovechkin in your top 5 there?
I did not.
You did not have Ovechkin in your top 5. So that's something to keep in mind for our conversation in a few minutes here. I'm going to list off my top 5 now. I'm not going to give Clayton Keller the amount of respect that you gave him, but he's undoubtedly a top player or a top left winger in this league. There's no doubt about that. I'm going to start it off. I'm going to give Brady Tkachuk the same respect that you gave him at number 5, followed by Artemi Panarin at number 4, followed by Alex Ovechkin at number 2.
Oh, you skipped number 3 there.
Oh, at number 3, excuse me. My bad. Thank you. Followed by Jason Robertson at number 2 and Kirill Kaprizov at number 1. So let's get into this right away. What don't you like about my rankings, Liam? And I'll tell you what I don't like about yours.
100%. Honestly, big fan of Ovi. He's number 6 for me. But last season, I wouldn't even say it was a down season, but he didn't hit that 50-goal plateau. He hit about 40. He's still an amazing goal scorer, but I think his overall impact might lessen this season. And I see the other 5 guys ahead of him, not based off their past history, but what they can be, might have a bigger impact on their team next year.
No, so, look, that's, yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, you're good.
I just had Ovi there, and that was the only difference, right? I definitely can see how Kaprizov is ahead of Robertson. I think it's very close. They're the 1-2 there. And then after that, we're pretty similar.
Yeah, look, I mean, my case for Ovi here, my case to be made for Ovi is just, again, it's the ability to score at will. And we want to, and I guess what I'll harp on out of your argument here is the fact that you said he plateaued at 40, around 40, which he did. He hit 42. If that's the standard, if that's the lower limit, if that's the starting point for a guy like Alex Ovechkin, I'm still putting him in that upper echelon. And I'm not saying that you're not, because at number 6 is very, very respectable, especially at 37 years of age. But I think that his scoring ability, and again, if you surround him with the right guys, especially on this power play now that's going to be led, or is still led by Ovechkin, a potential healthy Backstrom, Max Pacioretty as the trigger man on the other side, Kuznetsov hopefully healthy. Look, this is absolutely a team that's in a very weird spot. They're in a very, we'll call it the middle ground. We'll call it mediocre, if you will. But I still think that if Ovi can hit 40 goals at minimum in the 2023-2024 season, there's no reason in my eyes why he shouldn't be ranked in that top 5.
100%. I agree with you. He's still a great player. I just don't see the assist upside if we're just talking points specifically. He's got the goal upside, obviously.
He's never really had the assist upside, though.
No, that's true. But yeah, just the other 5 guys, I think, will have more of an impact on their team than Ovi will. Maybe they won't have as many points. Maybe they won't have as many goals. But just in terms of overall impact, I'm seeing Ovi having a lesser.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, I'm not even going to sit here like, you told me you didn't agree with me on Ovi, and maybe I don't necessarily agree with you on Keller, but I don't think it's a crazy take. I don't think it's a crazy take. Do you want to run us through why you have Keller as high as you do?
Yeah, I just really love Clayton Keller. He carries that Arizona team, makes everybody around him better. And in the past 2 seasons, he's been super underrated. He had 86 points last year. The season before that, he left with an injury, but ended the season amazingly, being point per game. Just overall, he's a terrific player and makes that Arizona team better. And also, like again, like I said before, going back to our division rankings, I think he's going to be a big reason why Arizona takes a step this season. Maybe not into the playoffs, but definitely not in that bottom 5 range.
Fair enough. And I just wanted to give my reasoning, I guess, for as to why I have Kaprizov over Jason Robertson here. It's not even. I think I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna sit here and stand my ground. I think that the talent discrepancy between Robertson, or I guess between Kaprizov and Robertson, is still massive. I think that Kaprizov is honestly by far and away the best left winger in this league right now, and I don't think it's particularly close. And I know you said that it's relatively close, and actually you have Robertson ahead of Kaprizov. My argument here is that without Kaprizov, the Minnesota team is absolutely in shambles. I don't think that they touch the playoffs. I don't think that they sniff top 3 in their division without Kaprizov. And I think that you can make the case for Robertson being an MVP candidate, a guy that is so crucial to the success of the Dallas Stars. But I think that because he's surrounded by the likes of, Rope Hintz, Pavelski, Jamie Benn, Heiskanen on D, Jake Ottinger, like this Minnesota team actually, without Matt Zuccarello, who I would say is a complementary piece to Kirill Kaprizov, without that, I'm really scared for what the future has to offer for the Minnesota Wild. So that's the reason why I think that there's actually kind of, instead of, I won't even call it a small gap. I think it's a relatively big gap between the two players.
Fair enough. I think Robertson makes Rupe Hintz a much better player, but there's also Pavelski, like you said, Heiskanen, where Minnesota really literally has nobody. So I can definitely understand your opinion there. I think it's still pretty close, but Kaprizov definitely is maybe having a bigger impact than Robertson is on his respected team.
Fair enough.
Respective
And
team.
and look, maybe it's because I have Kaprizov in fantasy for the past 2 years, so I probably tuned into a lot more games than I have the Dallas Stars. But honestly, it's just he's really fun to watch, and I think that like with the puck, and even without the puck, he's a incredibly, like he's a. I mean, we won't go into our top 10 players in the league right now because I think we'll save that for a part 2 when we actually go through all the positions. But I think he's definitely borderline top 10, if not top 10. But let's look at some honorable mentions for now. I'm just going to throw some out there. If you have any that I'm forgetting, let me know. The one that I want to focus on for now, and let me know what you think, Brad Marchand. 35 years old, came off a hip surgery before the beginning of the season, but still managed to post 67 points in 73 games last season on a team that obviously excelled in the regular season, didn't have such a great postseason, excelled in the regular season. Now is playing on a team that is Bergeron-less and David Krejci-less, as well as Tyler Bertuzzi. They don't no longer Dmitry Orlov. So I don't know what that's going to mean for his point totals, but if we're looking as an individual player and what he's capable of doing at both ends of the ice, I think he's absolutely an honorable mention in this case.
Yeah, I think he's an honorable mention too, but it maybe 2-3 years ago, we're saying how Marchand's the best left winger in the league. And I think that's really changed in the past year just because of that injury. And now it seems like it's more of Pasternak's team than Marchand's team. You can disagree with that, but
No, I don't.
Okay. I think that, yeah. So I think it's Pasternak's team now. Marchand's still an unreal player, but just the overall impact, once again, I think Marchand doesn't have as much as that impact as the other 5 guys that I had on my list there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'm not saying that he's top 5. I just think that he, again, 67 points in 73 games is right under point per game as a 35-year-old, right? Like if we're giving credit where credit's due, right? If I'm giving Ovi credit, I got to give Marchand credit for what he's providing at both ends of the ice at this period in his career.
100%.
Other guys, go ahead.
I had a couple more guys. I think a real wild card this season is going to be Johnny Gaudreau. 2 seasons ago, 100, whatever it was, 115 plus points. unreal season with Calgary, comes over to Columbus, where the team obviously had a very disappointing season, not a great roster, struggled with injuries. I think this season he can definitely get back to that 100-point range. I really wouldn't be surprised. And I think he might be back in the top 5 next season. We're going to see what Johnny can do this year.
Yeah, I can see that too. I think, again, it's tough to separate a player's position from their individual talent sometimes, right? And playing on Columbus didn't necessarily help his case because that team was obviously very, very poor last season in where they finished. But I think as an individual player, he obviously excels at every. I'm not saying he gets better every year because he's had a few in between seasons between 2 seasons ago and his breakout season in Calgary, like his first breakout season in Calgary. But I absolutely do think that Johnny Gaudreau is an honorable mention in this case. Did you have any others? I have one, but I'll let you go.
Last guy I had was Kyle Connor. I think unreal player, has the ability to get to that 45 goal range. I actually had him as my number 7 here above Gaudreau. I just really like Kyle Connor overall. Plays a really strong game. This season, we might see some regression just based on the guys he's playing with, but Scheifele, Ehlers, Morrissey, they're all still there. So we'll see how he does this season.
Yeah, no, I really like it. I think Kyle Connor is an absolutely pure goal scorer, and maybe, he has a few defensive woes, but when you're factoring in, again, like I said, if I'm giving Ovi credit, then you got to give Kyle Connor, who's, scoring 40 goals a season, right? Just about. So with 50 plus upside. So I really like Kyle Connor as an honorable mention there. The last guy that I'll mention on my list for honorable mentions is Kevin Fiala. I don't know I know that you're a big Fiala guy. I'm a big Fiala guy as well. But if we just go back 2 seasons to his 2021-2022 season in Minnesota, he put up 85 points in 82 games, right? So that's over point per game. Then a new situation in LA, right? A lot of people are speculating that he's going to play alongside Kopitar. He's going to play alongside Kempe, which he did a little bit, but he was also sheltered on that third line, playing 15, 16 minutes still, but his line mates weren't nearly as good. He still posted 72 points in 69 games. So again, right over point per game. He was injured for about 13 games, but all that to say is that I think Kevin Fiala has really proved that he's more than just a complementary player on a good team. He's more than just Kirill Kaprizov's counterpart, right? He's his own player, and he's good enough to be in that conversation for not top 5, but potentially top 10.
100%. I think he's just one of the most consistent guys in the league, super underrated. And in Minnesota, I don't think he ever played with Kaprizov other than on the power play because they both played on I guess they both played on the same side if they're both left wings.
I think Fiala played with Kaprizov a little bit near the end of the season, but for the entirety, I think he was. I don't think he was with Kaprizov. I think you're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so super consistent player. We both love him. Crazy shot, great hands. Just overall, I really like Fiala. I like that honorable mention there.
Perfect. Thank you for that. All right, so now I'm gonna go into my top 5 on the right wing. I think that I think we're relatively in line with consensus for the most part. There's a couple of guys here and there that we might be a little bit higher on than some others, but that's the whole beauty of opinions, right? So Let's keep it going here. I'm going to start it off with my right wings. We'll get into the honorable mentions a little bit after. I have one, and I'm it's still eating at me that I don't have him here, but anyway, we'll talk about his impact after. Number 5 for me is I can't. It's hard for me to say it. Number 5 for me right now at this point in time is Nikita Kucherov.
Wow. Okay.
Number 4 for me is Mikko Rantanen. Number 3 for me is Matt Tkachuk. Number 2 is Mitch Marner. And number 1 is David Pastrnak.
Wow. That's a wow. I have the same 5 players, just in a very different order. But I will discuss it in a second.
Look, I think, and before I get hate, I think that there's obviously a lot of, you can move guys around. And I'm not saying that the difference from 5 to 4 is necessarily significant. And look, if I need to break it down and explain my picks, no problem. I think, but I'll let you shoot your 5 first.
Well, yeah, all 5 of these guys are honestly really close. And I think there's a huge drop off after that. But let me give my top 5 here. So number 5, I got Mitch Marner. Number 4, I got Mikko Rantanen. Number 3, I got David Pastrnak. Number 2, Nikita Kucherov, and number 1, Matty Tkachuk.
So definitely different. Definitely different. And I think that, look, I think a lot of people were making here's my take on. I'll give you my explanation. I'll let you do what you want with it. I think I put Matty Tkachuk at 3, specifically because I think that he obviously brings a lot to the table, and he's proved that over the last couple seasons. One of them in Calgary, one of them in Florida, and he's obviously been a good player his whole career, but he really broke out in the last couple seasons. I just don't necessarily know if I want to jump the gun by giving him a little bit more credit than he deserves going into this season, when the likes of, in my opinion, I know that you have Marner at 5 and we can discuss that, but a guy like Mitch Marner and a guy like David Pastrnak, who have now been pretty consistent over the last, basically their whole career. Pastrnak goal-wise, Marner assist-wise, and points-wise, their whole career in terms of just producing. And I think that you take Pastrnak away from the Bruins, they're screwed. I think if you take Marner away from the Leafs, I equally think that they're screwed. And we can make the case for Matthews and Tavares, but I think Marner is really the gelling piece in Toronto. Now, you can make the case that if you take Matty Tkachuk away from the Florida Panthers, they're screwed. I just think that the Panthers, without Tkachuk and replaced with Johnny Huberdeau, were still a first overall caliber team. They did it without him, and they could do it again without him. Now, that's if they were to replace Tkachuk with Huberdeau. But anyway, yeah. I just think that it's all up in the air.
They're all very close. It's hard to make a specific ranking. I'm sure people are going to have their opinions on our lists. I'm sure other people have Kucherov at 1. Anyways, I just think Toronto has that top 4, those 4 guys that all contribute. I love Mitch Marner. I think he's up there with Matthews as the top player on the Leafs. But I just think if you take away Marner, that team is still a playoff team. Whereas if you take away Tkachuk, I don't think they're touching the playoffs last year. I don't think they're touching the Stanley Cup Finals. Just his leadership and his ability on both ends of the ice is just unreal. And coming into next season, I think he still has that same impact. With Kucherov, I'll give you 1 second with Kucherov. I still think he has that ability to crack 120 points, and his passing is just unreal. So although they do have Stamkos, Point, they still have Vasilevsky, Hedman, I think his impact on the ice might be more involved than Mitch Marner, if I'm ranking them.
No, I think that's absolutely fair. I think that's absolutely fair. And look, the truth is a lot of people during that playoff run for the Florida Panthers that were making the argument that Tkachuk is a better all-around player than Leon Draisaitl, that Tkachuk is a top 5 player in the league. And I think that he does merit respect, but I think that respect, there's a fine line where that respect is drawn. And I think that Tkachuk absolutely deserves more respect. And a top 5 winger is already giving him more respect than he's ever received at any point in his career, let alone top 3. So I think that, maybe I'm disrespecting him a little bit if we're looking at recency bias, but I think if we're looking at, because you can scope in on what Tkachuk did in the playoffs and make the case for why he's so good. And you can also point to David Pastrnak and the Leafs David Pastrnak and the Bruins and Mitch Marner and the Leafs and how they didn't go as far. So those guys didn't necessarily get to showcase their whole arsenal of talents. But I do think that there's a little bit of recency bias in the Tkachuk debate. Look, putting him 1 isn't insane at right wing. It's not insane, but I do think it's a little bit, you're looking more to a little bit.
I'm just looking specifically for next season. I'm not even basing any consistencies or stats from the last few years. I just think this is, I don't want to say the impact, because then it's just tunneling in on one stat or one category per se. But I just think Tkachuk has that again, I'm going to say impact, but he has the biggest impact on the team out of all 5 of those guys. But again, it's really close. It's hard to say. I think there's a small gap between all of them. there might not be a gap at all, but that's just my top 5.
Right. Absolutely. And I just wanted to say something about Pasternak for a second because, like, I think, he put up 61 goals last season, 61. And, like, yeah, goal scoring in the NHL has obviously gone up, but to put up 61 goals, that's a tough feat. And, like, if you're looking at guys that have done it, it's a very small list of guys. That's why I just think that he's obviously a top 10 player in the league. Top 5 is absolutely borderline because if we're looking at the centers in this league, they obviously have a little bit more under their belt compared to a guy like Pasternak in their respective careers and going into the 2023-24 season. But I think you can't take anything away from the fact that Pasternak did put up 61.
Yeah.
But anyway, maybe that's me looking at recency bias. Who knows? But anyway, so do you want to just list off your top 5, and then I'll go with my top 5?
Yeah. So I had Marner number 5, Rantanen number 4, Pasta number 3, Kucherov number 2, and Matty Tkachuk number 1.
Wow, it's incredibly different. And you know what? I think I had Rantanen number 4 and Kuch number 5. I think I can make the case for the swap there. But anyway, we'll keep it as is. Kucherov number 5, Rantanen number 4, Matty Tkachuk number 3, Mitch Marner number 2, and David Pasternak number 1. And do we want to run through a couple
honorable mentions?
Honorable mentions. Thank you.
Yeah. So after 5, I really think it drops off in the NHL. Right wings are very thin. So the only 2 guys I had were Willie Nylander and Mark Stone, but I don't think they even come close to those top 5.
Yeah, I don't think they come close, but I do think William Nylander is absolutely in the tier right after that, and I don't think it's close.
Yeah, they definitely tier after that, but not touching the ranks of those top 5.
No. I agree.
Do you have any other guys other than that?
I mean, I don't know if you consider JT Miller a right wing. I mean, he gets like a little bit of right wing time. He plays center too, but
he plays
I like
everything.
I like him in that tier. I think Mark Stone deserves some credit as an honorable mention. Again, yeah. I think you can put him in the same tier as Nylander, but again, that tier doesn't touch the top 5 that we mentioned.
It's hard to analyze defensive impact where Mark Stone has that terrific impact on the ice. So once again, I think he's an honorable mention, but just in terms of offensive ability, he's nowhere close to those top 5.
I agree. Another honorable mention that I can give just off the top of my head is Matt Zuccarello also. I think that there's a lot of guys on this list that obviously bring a lot to the table, and I think he's absolutely one of them. I mean, he has the point production, he has the consistency in this league to merit, again, maybe not the same tier as Nylander or Stone, but maybe that next tier. And the fact that it's so thin at right wing anyway, you can probably consider him a top 10 right winger in this league. Again, who knows for the outlook for the 2023-24 season, things change. And I think another one, and if I had to give it, is Timo Meier also.
Yeah.
Timo Meier is considered. Yeah, I think Timo Meier is straight up nasty. And I mean, again, he obviously has a different role on this New Jersey team. But if we're looking at individual talent and what he did in San Jose and what he does bring to the table as a, correct me if I'm wrong, but north of $9 million guy, do I have that right?
I think it was.
Or north of 8.5, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Anyway, he obviously brings a lot to the table. And the New Jersey Devils think so also.
Just quickly, DeBrincat and Tuck also, I think, are up there
too. Absolutely. Again, I think DeBrincat's obviously going to have a prove-it season because he's shown that he can score 40 goals at ease with the right teammates. So let's see what he can do. Probably on the right wing, next to Larkin and Raymond, and then Tuck. Obviously, this guy's just been
overall
lights out in Buffalo. So underrated.
Just
criminally
provides a great two-way game. Very, very underrated player. And last one, Patty Kane. I don't know if you're for the upcoming season. I don't know, just because who knows where he's going to go, how healthy he is. But I think Patty Kane still has a pretty big impact on the ice.
And if we want to include Svechnikov.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like we're kind of grasping at straws here. As well as Joe Pavelski. I know he played. I mean, he's a natural center, but he plays some wing with those top 2 guys. So all these guys obviously merit an honorable mention, but obviously a massive teardrop after those top 5 that we mentioned in no particular order, and honestly in completely different orders. But we're on the same page in terms of the players, so that's good at least.
Yeah.
But anyway, we have reached the 35-minute mark, and I think that we're both satisfied where with where we stand in terms of our rankings. Is there anything you want to say, Liam?
No, I think we covered it all. I think we got a good amount of different players, but also have pretty similar lists at the same time. So we want to hear your opinions too. So when we post it up, give us all the heat, list your top 5 for each position, catch us on Insta and TikTok. We're going to be posting it up soon.
Absolutely, guys. And we're going to try and be consistent on a week-to-week basis for the upcoming season. So if there's anything in particular you guys want to see, let us know in the comments down below. We thank you so much for listening to episode 62 of the Habs Culture Podcast. My name is Justin Schwartz alongside Liam Baum. Thank you so much for listening, guys.